I have no idea how, but we are halfway through the Indiana Pacers season. Unbelievable that the Pacers have played 41 games. We're going to talk about their first half and where this team can improve in the second half. And joining me to do so today will be the new Indy Star Pacers beat writer, Dustin Dopirak. We cover so much about this team, their strong start, where they can grow, their good defense, their good offense, surprising play from basically everybody, all coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name is Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today it's officially here, halfway through the Pacers season. I cannot believe that it's already been 41 games, but there's a lot to talk about for this team so far. Their surprising start, a ton of guys playing well, their promising future, and yet where they can still grow as they sit 23-18 at the halfway point. Joining me to do all that today is going to be Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. He's the Pacers' new beat writer this season. He's doing an awesome job. We're going to talk about all things the first half of the Pacers season today. So let's just bring him in. Dustin, let's do this. And now here for the first time from the Indianapolis Star, it's Dustin Dopirak, the man I see every day, more than anyone in my life except my girlfriend. Dustin, we're halfway through the season. For me, we're 2 months into your change into Pacerland, but how you feeling on a new beat before we get going today?
It's been good, man. Also, thanks for Sherpa-ing me, was basically what you've been doing, more or less. The guidance has been very much appreciated as far as helping me find my way around, including finding out that there was an elevator on the fourth floor of Gainbridge, so I can actually make it into games without Rick yelling, into post-game press conferences without Rick yelling at me. So that's all of that has been a big help. So thank you for making the transition easier for me, Tony. You've been a huge help, man.
It has been awesome to have more people on the beat. More coverage is always good, the way I see it. And you've been a great asset to our beat. And speaking of, this team is now halfway through the season. Look, let's be honest. I went through their schedule one game at a time. I had them at 26 wins this year, Dustin. They have 23 right now. One of, if not the number one most surprising teams in the NBA this season, the Indiana Pacers. And so many guys are stepping up. We'll get to that. But big picture, with a 23-18 team that's in the playoff spot firmly in the East right now, what has stood out to you most about this group in your time covering them and in their first half of the season so far?
Yeah, I mean, I hate saying it because a lot of it is going to track with what I think Rick Carlisle tells us a lot. But I mean, my God, are these guys having fun? I mean, like, they just seem they're playing an enjoyable brand of basketball, the style, but like the extent to which they really genuinely seem to like each other. It's just a fun beat to cover because they are performing beyond what they would have expected. So, like, everything is sort of a joyride for them. I mean, when you cover a team that's really good but expected to be really good, there's a grind to it because every loss is like, oh man, is it going to go the other way? When a team's not expected to be very good, like every win is a joy, and that's how they're playing right now. But I mean, like, I guess the more you look at them, I mean, there are flaws clearly, but it's just a better, more talented group than I would have expected, and the youth is really, as young as they are, act mature is probably pushing it because like they do have some youngness to them. Like, there's a lot of youthful energy in there. But they're obviously led by a 22-year-old who has the maturity of somebody much older. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton just seems to have, for as much as he's just, again, a fun guy to be around, he's just also got some wisdom that's beyond his years, and like him sort of just driving the train just makes everything work, makes everything click. And I think just the other thing is, like, whenever they have a problem, they generally fix it. I mean, there's a handful of like roster issues that there's nothing you can do about them. They're never going to be the best rebounding team in the league. But like, when they were having bad starts and they've kind of corrected that. They were having bad finishes and they've kind of corrected that. And sort of anywhere that there's like a serious issue with their game that they can address, they generally do. And it doesn't become, I think we've kept waiting for this shoe to drop. But this is finally going to be the thing they can't get over. That this is what's finally going to drive them down, and they're going to lose 5, 6, 7 in a row because of it. But every time we think we're seeing that, they fix it.
Yeah, when they dropped under 500. They lost to the Knicks. Halliburton missed that game winner over Julius Randle. I thought in that moment, I might have said this to you. A lot of things I say on the show, I say to you at the game before. I think I said, I don't know if they get back over 500. Like that felt like they just lost to the Cavs. I think they'd lost 4 or 5. Like that felt like a back-breaking stretch. But you just said it, and it's something I've talked about a lot too, is like they just respond all year. And the part of the problem is that they put themselves in situations where they have to respond, but they do it. And that's really hard to do for a young team, but they continue to do it. And a lot goes into that. And part of it's all that stuff you just talked about, where like they're really connected. Miles Turner is the word he just used last night when I asked him about the clutch play, was trust, right? And like, not that last year's team was like hated each other, didn't have trust, but like you can see it manifested when you go, they went 11-34 in clutch games last year. Like that's atrocious and awful and untenable, and they just weren't as close as this year's team is. And the stunning part about that is Tyrese has been a big part of this, and James Johnson's been a big part of this. Like half these guys were on the same team last year, more than half, I think, if I truly went through the list. So the fact that Rick Carlisle and the coaching staff, as well as these players who are all new together and had expectations to win, whatever number, my number doesn't matter, but a low number of games, have come together to be a threatening team that is hard to beat. It is just so impressive. And that is the story of the first half, right? Like, regardless of how their second half goes, the fact that they were able to be a good NBA team for half their season is already something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's just clearly they're just ahead of schedule. Like just all of it is ahead of schedule. I mean, there are going to have to be more pieces brought in. I mean, I think they need another, really high level player that's going to be a top 2 or 3 guy on the roster, somewhere in that range. I mean, I think there's got to be one more name that's kind of a real cornerstone piece at some point, whether it's through the draft or whether it's through free agency or whatever. There's got to be, I think, another guy brought in to really allow this team to get into that top tier when you could call them a contender. I mean, right now there has, I think, been some level of, tiering. There's a better word for that. But, obviously you've got Boston, Milwaukee, you've got Brooklyn, and you've got sort of Philadelphia and Cleveland after them. And then the Pacers are in that next mix of teams, and they could end up 6th. They could wind up 8th. They could wind up 10th, but I'd kind of be surprised. I feel like right now the direction they're heading is somewhere that's 6, 7, 8 range. And I think you can flip a coin between, them, the Knicks, and the Heat, basically. And they're going to need something else, but it's clearly something that's ahead of schedule. And as you said, like so many times when they're in positions where like, okay, they're just dogging it tonight, like every once in a while that stays, but it's like maybe once every 10 games or so they have one where they get off to a bad start, or they have a bad end of first quarter or whatever, and they just never get off the canvas. But the last one for that was the Pelicans. That's the last time that was the case, is they had a game like that, and that's going back to December 26th. And even last night they started off, it didn't start off terrible, but like second unit had a terrible end of the first quarter. Not a much great start of the second. They really had to rely on the starters a lot more than they usually do. And it didn't matter. I mean, they just erased that. That lead was, pretty much gone by halftime. They had a 15-point first quarter and had like a 36-point second quarter. And they get over things quickly. And again, they just keep putting themselves in position and they fix it. I mean, back to your point, as far as like them, when we thought that they might be in trouble when they lost to the Knicks. I mean, like you looked at that schedule coming up and it was like, okay, first off, you're going to Boston, it's basically one of the toughest places you could think of to play right now. Follow that up at Miami after the Heat had just held them to 82, and then playing the Pelicans. And I don't know if Zion had COVID yet at that point. I can't remember, like as of the Knicks game, if he did. I don't think so. But you're thinking you're seeing a full tilt Pelican squad. You still got beat by who they had left. But like I was thinking, okay, they're going to go 0 for 3 then, and they just got to try to find a way to make it up on the homestand, which wasn't going to be easy either, because you're looking at Atlanta, Cleveland, Clippers, Toronto in a row, and you're like, okay, well this could be a really bad stretch. And they win, that's out of those 7, they win 6. Like it's wild to consider. Just that seemed like the point where it was going to go the other direction, and it almost couldn't have gotten any better.
Wally Zerbiak save their season, apparently. Exactly. After that Knicks game. That'll be a fun story to tell in a few years if this team continues to trend in the direction it looks like. Let's take one short little break here so I can talk to you about Prize Picks? You want to take Luka Doncic to score more than 32.5 points, or LeBron to have more or less than 7.5 rebounds? That's the entire gist of Prize Picks. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will score more or less than their Prize Picks projections on any stat, you could win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. That's what I love about it. You can't get out researched. It's just you versus Prize Picks numbers, and they offer projections on any sport that you watch: NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college, you name it, they've got it. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's super easy. It's safe. They have fast withdrawals, and it's operational in over 30 states plus Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, you get 100. You deposit 50, they'll give you 50. You get the idea, but you got to use that promo code Locked On at PrizePicks for that instant deposit match. PrizePicks daily fantasy made easy. We're going to zoom out again, even farther, because if you told me before the season these guys would be 23-18 at the halfway point, a lot of things would have had to go a certain way for that to happen. Like Halliburton has to be at or near an all-star level, and Miles Turner would have to be playing very well, and Buddy Hield would have to be playing very well, and Benedict Mathurin would have to be contributing at a pretty solid level as a rookie. And basically every single one of those things has actually happened, like outside of Chris Duarte and maybe Jalen Smith, given how good he was after he was traded here last season. Basically everybody has been at or over the expectations set for them entering this season. And so in your eyes, what player, thing, if that's defense, offense, whatever, has been the most surprising thing about this group so far?
I mean, I think it's interesting to answer this from sort of like fresher eyes. I mean, obviously I kept an eye on this team just being here. Even as I was covering IU, just had some sense of what the Pacers were doing, but I mean, I wasn't watching them on a night in, night out basis. And as far as like, okay, like when you get in, you get the list. Okay, here's the players. Here's who you're going to be covering. This is kind of their history. You don't look at that list and say, that by January, Aaron Nesmith is going to be one of the most important players on the team. And not that you look at him and you think, okay, he can't do anything or whatever, but you're not sort of expecting that guy's going to be a starter and he's going to be a mission critical piece to what they're doing. He's going to win them games. That there are going to be plays he makes down the stretch that are the difference between winning and losing. He's going to be on the floor in crunch time. He's going to be defending the best players in the world. Nembhard too. Those two are really the obvious surprises. Because obviously they don't have massive stats, but they're doing this on defense, and again they are guarding, between the two of them, the best players in the world and doing a pretty good job of it. Obviously, this is not a great top to bottom defensive team. Neither one of those guys is going to be all NBA defense this year for sure. All defense NBA. But they make everything work. That they create a wholly functional system where you're not throwing guys who are much better offensive players than are defensive players. I mean, Buddy Hield's had to take on, I think, some tougher, matchups than you'd like. And obviously he ends up getting switched onto a lot of those guys. But he's not running around with Donovan Mitchell all day, stuff like that. That keeps his legs fresh. He's hitting shots. Tyrese Halliburton, the same thing. He's able to kind of be there and, pick off steals when the ball's on the floor, without having to sort of be locked in on a top level player. And they just make all the pieces work. I mean, I saw, I thought Nembhard was a good player at Gonzaga, and I saw them in their first round tournament game last year when Indiana was playing up in Portland at the same site. But he didn't blow me away. Like, he was solid, he was steady, but I was, I never would have thought he's going to guard LeBron James next year. Like that wasn't on. And do it well, and then practically take out Steph Curry for a night. Wasn't on my bingo card. No way, no how. But those two guys have obviously really just elevated this group, done it kind of quietly. I mean, the other guys are all a little bit better than I thought. But it's just, those weren't necessarily guys you were thinking of as being Michigan critical pieces to this team elevating, and they really, really have been.
Yeah, even looking back at those Gonzaga teams, Nembhard was clearly good, but he was never even one of the best, three players on the team.
He was the sixth man on the team that was undefeated until the final.
Right.
He was coming off the bench. I mean, Jalen Suggs is your starting point guard on that team. They had J.I.I.E. at the other spot. Corey Kispert, Timmy. And there's one guy I'm forgetting, and it's gonna take me a minute, and I'll drag it up on Basketball Reference while I'm talking. But yeah, I mean, like he wasn't at all the first guy that you thought of whatsoever. I mean, those were like all, and he was more important on last year's team. Once they lost Suggs, and once they lost Ayayi and those guys, like he really played a more important role. Where are we? I guess Anton Watson is the other guy, Julian Strother. Those aren't the main guys. I mean, I think Nembhard still came off the bench only because, they had another point guard, but he still, got a lot of his, he was a critical piece, but he was clearly the fifth guy, like he was, and I don't want to say a distant fifth, but he was fifth, after that group. And, last year you still had Holmgren, you still had Timmy, those guys were, the drawing points for that team, and he was there running the show, but like he didn't really blow you away either. Bolton was probably scoring more points. But he just does so many things well. Like he just plays such a mature game. And Carlisle keeps saying he's old school and new school at the same time. And I mean, the kid's just all business. We have a hard time getting him to say anything. But
not in a bad way for anybody.
Not in a bad way, no. But it's funny. Like every once in a while, he'll give you like two sentences that are just gold. But I mean, you could just the IQ is really, really there. But I mean, again, he's fearless. I mean, he stepped in the Golden State game. When Halliburton's out, when McConnell's out, just drops 31 like it was nothing. Like it was just like, okay, this is what I got to do today. Like no one else is here to take these shots. I'll take these shots. Score 31 points. Beat Steph Curry on his home floor. No problem. Just ton of maturity the guy has.
Yeah, that game made no sense, even in retrospect. Like Nembhard being good, obviously.
17. Yeah.
Sorry, amazing. Obviously, is a factor there, but like Kendall Brown, Trevelyan Queen, like all these guys who never play, seriously contributing.
Yeah, exactly. And they were a wreck the night before.
Yeah, Portland.
Portland. It was. Yeah, I mean, I think it was second night of a back-to-back too. I mean, they got. Portland was a mess. James Johnson was the backup point guard in that game. And you're like, okay, like what, and to all credit for James Johnson for how important he's been at this team. And we've obviously, everybody's been talking about that this week because he got his contract guaranteed for the rest of the year. But a point guard, he is not. That is not his number one sort of contribution he can make. But it was like, okay, well, there's just no way they can go in Golden State and beat them. And they did. It was really remarkable. I mean, obviously, Golden State was, and they were still missing some pieces, missing Wiggins, weren't defending really well, but still, like that's just not supposed to happen, and it did, and it was, and I think that was an important game. I mean, I think that got them back on track too, because they lost a couple in a row. They lost to, I think that was 3 in a row. They lost to Sacramento, bad. Lost to Utah pretty bad, almost as bad, if not worse. And then lose to Portland. All three of those, I think, were double-digit losses, and that was another moment where you're seeing you're starting to see the bottom fall out, and then it didn't. There's several of those points in the season where you thought right as it was like, okay, this is where you see the regression, and that was one of those games that was a reason why the regression didn't happen.
If I had to pinpoint the biggest surprise, I would definitely put Neesmith and Nembhard near the top because I thought they were going to be one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And like last year after the trade deadline, they were the worst from the trade or from the All-Star break to the end of the season. They were literally the worst defense in the NBA. And yeah, they get Turner back and McConnell barely played. Like I understand those guys inserting them, how important that is. Turner especially has been unbelievable the last couple of games, but that doesn't take you from that to average. And they're below average. They're 18th in defensive rating, but they're close enough to average that it's like, how do they have an average defense with mostly a lot of the same guys that were just miserable on that end last year? And those two youngsters being able to guard good players or the type of guys that they still struggle with at times, those bigger wings, those Jeremy Grant, Harrison Barnes-esque players, but to at least slow them down a little bit and Nembhard to guard the guards, it has been so huge for their defense because they're not just a Miles Turner operation anymore. And they get some contributions from other guys defensively, but that's been a big part of them. I still think, to me, like before the year, I thought Halliburton could be pretty damn good. Maybe not all-star good, but pretty damn good this year. And Turner in a center role, like he had been the same guy for a lot of years, but there was at least a chance that he could step up. I'm usually of the mind that rookies are just not positive contributing players in their first season. And sometimes they, like Duarte last year was like, sometimes very good and sometimes not, to the point that he was about an average NBA player. Mathurin has been my surprise to the point that it's like, he is good now, like today. And he just this is terrible timing because he just had one of his worst games of the season on Sunday. But
he's had enough good ones that it's like, we're not dealing in a small sample size here anymore.
Right. Right.
Like
he can get to the line better than anyone on the team today, and better than anyone they've had for a while. Even a guy like Sabonis, who was banging inside all the time, and Oladipo, who was a master driver, like he can get to the free throw line in a way that gives him such a high floor, because then your bad nights are still salvageable. Even if you can't hit your shot, you can be moderately efficient if you can get to the foul line. He definitely has a lot of stuff to improve on. Like you saw in the Hornets game, I think for the first time at a consistent level, a team that said, we're making you pass, right? They sent two to him and he had to just dribble backwards and reset in a way that you need to see that growth for him passing. But the fact that he's been very good offensively, like in the running for sixth man of the year, and that's not like a joke, like this guy's scoring 17 plus points every game and can get to the line and is a heady on-ball defender. Like that has been my biggest surprise, and a big reason why I think they're 500 is that they have a fourth, like, oh, wow, good offensive player beyond Hield, Turner stepping up, and Halliburton. It's like, oh, this rookie is awesome at scoring. One more break here, guys, so I can talk to you about two awesome groups of people. First up, the good folks over at BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball. They've got it all over at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, guess what? You can find those at BetOnline as well. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. They've got lines up for the football playoffs this week. For example, dead even line in Jags Chargers, which is fascinating to me. 49ers favored by 10 over the Seahawks. All those lines and more over at BetOnline.net for the first round of the NFL postseason. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Let me also talk to you guys about TurboTax. Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do, well, not your taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box full of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. You get the idea. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset with TurboTax, the 100% expert guarantee. An expert will do your taxes from start to finish so you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting while your expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
Right, and his sort of immediate growth is another big reason why. Again, you quicken up the sort of rebuilding process. What stage you're in? It's because you look at him and you say that, okay, that is another franchise cornerstone. That is a guy that you look at and say that is one of the two major pieces at this point to what you're going to build towards. Like whatever happens with Turner, you can look and you say you have Halliburton and you have Mathurin for the long run. I mean, you presume obviously at some point Mathurin's going to sort of graduate and get to be part of that first unit on a constant basis. I mean, it might not happen this year the way that they're built now. It probably makes sense to ride it out with him as a six man the rest of the year, provided nobody else, gets injured and has any serious injuries. If he has to start from time to time when someone misses a game with an ankle, that's one thing. But it seems to make sense where he is. But I mean, he's going to be, a top level NBA scorer, like a top 30 guy in the league at least. And I'm being probably, like conservative with that. But he's going to be a guy that can average 25. Like that's not pushing it, I don't think, one bit. It gets, becomes a starter and gets a little bit more minutes and gets used to, this level of play and how he's going to be guarded differently. I mean, there's just, like you said, I mean, the biggest thing is like he goes so hard to the rim, and so like it is really hard to keep him away from that. He's a really good finisher, but he's just physical, and to stop him, you have to get in his way, and that means you're probably going to foul him a lot of nights, and that gets him to the line. I mean, he's a good enough shooter. He is a true 3-level scorer, really good in the mid-range, again, really good. I think he feel like he's getting better finishing around the rim. It seems like his left-hand finishes get better all the time. Like they're just, sublime, really. It's just more and more of that stuff. And so there's just so many ways he could score. And I think, as Carlisle and so many other people have said about, either teammates or previous coaches or whatever, like the kid just wants to get better so bad. And he's just constantly working on everything. And if you think as a coach that there's something wrong with the game, he wants to know it, now he wants to fix it. And so like he's just intense. Like, I mean, there are other guys on this team that are sort of more jovial. Halliburton obviously is. Mathurin is just kind of locked in, and Mathurin wants to kill you. Like, Mathurin wants to beat the daylights out of you as his opponent. Like, he's just like a vicious competitor, and he wants to be great. And that's a driving force for some guys like that. You could just sense that he is going to get better and better and be better because he's that driven. He's that skilled. He picks stuff up quickly and adds it to his game and just builds out. I mean, there are other, again, he has a lot further to go defensively than he does offensively, but I mean, offensively, he's there now. Like, he is a really good offensive player now, and he's going to be a great offensive player. And so, like, I guess that's the thing. By the time I even got on the beat, it was already established that he was that good. I really liked Arizona. I mean, I thought, like, it really, in retrospect, I think it's mostly played out this way, that, like, you had those kind of three tiers. You had the tiers of the three big men with Holmgren, Banchero, and Smith, and then the next with the wings was basically Murray, Ivy, and Mathurin, and I think basically if you were set with any of those six spots, any of those guys, you were in good shape. I think everybody, Holmgren's obviously hurt, but I mean, out of the other four, you got to be happy. Or I'm sorry, the other five, like you got to be happy with what you got right now. Smith probably is producing the least, but Murray's producing, Ivy's producing, and Mathurin is, it has been the second best rookie in the league to Banchero so far. I mean, so like just huge turn, payoff for those guys, but just again, really big that you hit with that pick. Just massive to finally get a top 10 pick to really nail it.
It's wild how good he's been as the sixth pick, and I don't think any team in front of them in the draft would undo their pick. I think everybody would still pick the same.
Yeah, like maybe if you're Detroit, maybe you'd take him, but like you don't feel bad about having Ivy,
right?
Like you don't think you lost. Like Ivy's done a lot of really good things, and like I love Ivy's game. I mean, I loved watching him at Purdue. He was terrific. I think he's gonna be really, really good too. Like Holmgren's still like, I mean, he's a unicorn. Like he is a freak. Like and obviously Wembanyama is gonna take that to a whole different level. But I saw Holmgren do things that don't make any sense. Physically, Holmgren just doesn't make any sense. You look at him like, how do you stand up? Like, how is that your body even possible? And then you're like crossing guys up at half court and dribbling around your back. Like, what are you? So he's going to be, I mean, like, he's still going to be really good. And, Banchero is just tremendous. And I think Smith's going to be really good. And, again, Murray, like Murray's probably a missing piece for a playoff team too. I mean, I think Murray probably fit them as well as anybody that they could ask for. I don't know that Mathurin's a better pick for Sacramento than Murray would have been. I think Murray just fits what they want to do. So like, again, like those top six picks, I think are all really going to pay off. And 5 of the 6 of them are paying off right now.
We've talked about this team, like in their ability to adjust and respond. And, I think Halliburton and Carlisle are the leaders of that for many reasons. They're both in the genius category of basketball. To steal Carlisle's words, they both are, right? Halliburton is as a player, Carlisle is as a coach. But I kind of view Mathurin as like the player embodiment of that as he develops as a rookie. Like if he's a bad first half, he told us this. They played the Knicks in the preseason twice. Like the second time he was much better. He was like, yeah, I watched the tape. I figured out how I can be better. So like a halftime, if he has a bad half, you can see he attacks differently in the second half. And then he had this awesome start where he has 2 30-point games in his first 8 or 9 games. I forget when the second one was, and 27 in Brooklyn. And then he starts to get slowed down a little bit. And Rick Carlisle says, yeah, he's, people figured out what he's good at. They're defending him differently. And now he's asking me how he can get better. And he's working on a Euro step and a floater. And, like you said, he's finishing with the left hand. Like that is what this team is about. And he does it as a rookie. And that is so impressive because rookies typically don't kind of get really good at adjusting and countering in a game-to-game basis in a season that takes a long time to develop. So he is the perfect kind of emblem of that. That said, Dustin, they have 41 more games. Who knows what's going to happen in the second half of the season? And they might have more than 41 more games if they keep playing like this. This was kind of loosely asked to a few players on Sunday, but where do you feel like this team needs to improve the most in the next 41?
Yeah, I mean, they still like for as much as we've talked about how much better they're getting defensively, they have to keep going. And the biggest thing is that they have to have, to use their term, the hit first mentality every single night, because if they don't have it, they're going to get crushed. Like they start at a disadvantage size wise because they're only at any given point in time with their 2 rotations, they're only putting out, there are 2 guys in the rotation who are taller than 6'7" right now, and so like their starting lineup, there's one guy taller than 6'6". On their second team, there's nobody taller than 6'9" and only one guy taller than 6'7". So they're not going to win on the glass long term, and they have to fight really, really hard to make it even. Like an even night on the boards is a win for them.
Yes.
And
a -5 night on the boards is a win for them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. When they lose, like they just can't get crushed on the boards. They can't give up a massive amount of second chance points, and I think honestly, that's the biggest number, more even than the rebounding battle itself. It's the second chance points number. Offensive rebounds is a big deal, but are they getting those? Is the other team getting those and then converting them? Like, are you, at least if you're giving up the offensive boards, that's a bad start, but are you then contesting the second shot? Are you getting into that? Like if someone gets the ball around the rim, are you getting back up and making it tough for them to finish on that end? Or are you, if they have to kick it back out and start a new play, are you blowing up that play and then getting the defensive rebound that time? Like that I think is really the key thing. When they can keep second chance points. And I think that I checked this out last night, they're 29th. They gave up the second most. I think Oklahoma City is the only team that gives up more second chance points per game. I mean, if they keep it under 10, or at 10, they've got a crack at it. It's when it gets up to 16, 17, 18, 20 that they got problems. And certainly they've had nights where they got more than that. I mean, I'm blanking on it right now, but I mean, Brooklyn might've been 36, or somewhere on that range.
I thought it was like in the 40s. That game they lost to the Underband Nets. Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, it might've been, man,
it was a lot.
I'm going to dig that up while I'm sitting here. But yeah, it was a crazy number. And
I'll try to get it.
Like that was, but I think that's the biggest thing is it's just, they're never going to be good at it. Like they're never going to be a good rebounding team. They're never going to be a top half rebounding team. Like it was 37. It was 37 to 12 on second chance points. They had 72 points in the paint that night, 59 to 30 on the boards total, 29 to 7 on offensive. Like it was just a absolute bloodletting in there. And there was reason for that. I mean, like the second team guys that Brooklyn put out were huge, I mean, Day'Ron Sharpe doesn't play, but he's massive. But yeah, bottom line, that's the thing that's there. It is always going to be a problem. It's always going to be an issue. They just have to limit that issue as much as possible, because that's how a team can really beat them. That's how a team can really put them away. And just, I think they're getting better at dictating their own pace. Teams figured out for a while how to slow them down, and I think they figured out how to counter that. And I think that's really important, is to keep doing that. Like, don't let Miami drag you into, into a rock fight. Like they keep getting better at that. I think so. Those are, I think, they're two of the biggest things that I would say.
Yeah, the rebounding. Look, they had to balance their lineups the way they did because their starts were awful, right? They were starting down 10 every game, it felt like. And they finally get a starting lineup that works, but down their second unit's worse. And they're smaller a lot of the time because Isaiah Jackson's the guy who lost to that exchange.
Yeah.
So I look, you can get better at rebounding with the personnel you have, but it's going to be very hard with the guys they played to get significantly better in that. And you and I were talking about this a little bit with Seth Johnson from Nuvo. I forget what game it was, but like it's kind of natural for their trade-off of, we're going to be, I think they're 6th in pace right now, which is not the perfect way to describe running in transition, but it's close.
Yeah.
They try to run so much that when the ball's in the air, some guys leak out. They don't go for the ball. And that helps them a lot on offense. They're really good at scoring in transition, but it also hurts them on the glass sometimes. And that's not to say they have good rebounders and it's a strategy thing. It's not. They have bad rebounders and they're small, but that is also a natural consequence of how they're playing in a way that, the guys that do rebound have to be better, even more so, because it's so important. And that they will have more games this year. Like this is not a guess that they lose because of rebounding, right? Like that Nets game, I think they took 14 less shots in the Nets. You can't win that way. You just cannot. That is too many possessions to overcome. The other thing I think for growth for them is defense. Like you said, it's not, their 18th is fine. They'll live with that. If they finish 18th, I bet they finish top 7 in the East. But with a bunch of younger guys, it's just hard to be consistent on defense every game, especially against some of the best teams in the league. And even Boston, their best win of the year in Boston, right? Boston figured them out in the second half. Like they held on for dear life to win that game. Like most good offensive teams still give them fits. And so I think that rebounding is a big one, and defense is another one that they're going to have to get better in the second half of the season. And this is year one of a new era. It's not like this is like immediate, oh my God, they have to get better at this, or the wheels are falling off in Indiana. No. If they don't get better, this is not even a deal. It's not even a thing. But if as a team grows, those are the points that I will be looking at of like, okay, that's how they got better in the second half, or what were the trade-offs to make those things better?
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's just, again, because like your cornerstones are puppies. I mean, like, your best perimeter defensive player is 22.
And your second best is 23.
Is Nembhard 23?
Yes, I think so. He might be 24.
I thought Nembhard was still 22. I mean,
gosh. Neesmith's 23. Is Nembhard 22?
I think so. I think I just checked
out.
I think he might turn 23
every day.
I think he might. He's got a birthday coming up because Isaiah's
Nembhard
is 22,
right? Correct.
Like they got some birthdays coming up. I think there's a lot of guys on that team that, like, I'm looking up on Basketball Reference where we got
1 week until Andrew Nembhard turns 23.
Is that right?
Yes.
Jeez. Yeah. I mean, like, again, like, I mean, he's like, obviously they switch a lot, so it's not like all him. It's not like he's only harassing these guys to all their misses, but like, especially lately, like he's doing really good on his assignments. Like, and Neesmith has probably done more all around. He's scoring well, rebounding well, chasing down loose balls, that kind of thing. But like in terms of like, okay, like just look at the guy, when you look at, when the game comes out, okay, who has who ends up having a better night? Like Nembhard's guy has a tougher night lately. I mean, I think, Lillard, I mean, like Nembhard was on Lillard primarily, and Lillard was 7-23. Like those guys are the guys that Nembhard guards are having a tough time. He is getting into every single one of them. And so it's like when that's when you start, like you have plenty of time to grow, like you have plenty of time to grow. Like you have really young guys that you're relying on for a ton of what you're doing. And so, like there's going to be growth there. And even like, Tyrese Halliburton, for what part he plays in defense, like you try to hide him to a certain extent. You can't hide anybody, in the NBA. At some point, you're going to get on a tough matchup, or you're going to put in a position where you have to do something. You can limit him to a certain degree, where you're not, having him chase around the best player. It's not a good idea, but, like he's going to get better as well. And again, like, I mean, he's probably, he's leading the league in steals. I don't know what you're not leading the league, leading the team in steals. And so he's obviously taking advantage of opportunities there, even though he's not guarding the best guy or the guy that's the primary, ball handler. He's finding a way to get the ball when it's out there, and turn that into transition. The more of that you get, the better. So they are going to improve. Like they're going to get better just by virtue of the fact that everybody they're relying on is very young, and it's going to come to them. It's coming at them really fast, and there's going to be improvement just by the nature of that.
100% agree. They've got about an average strength of schedule for the second half. I bet they end up somewhere in the 37 to 45 win range based on how they've played so far. But we'll see. You never know with a young team where things can go. You know what's funny, Dustin? At the end of these shows, I always like to say, hey, person I just talked to for 30 minutes, where can people find all your work? But I'm guessing most of the people who listen to this probably read everything you say already, but I will still give you time to promote yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's indiestar.com. I think you guys know where to find me. Like,
I know.
I mean, obviously everything's at the Indy Star, obviously, and I put out all my links on Twitter. At the handle that is thankfully on. Appreciate that, Tony.
Yeah, if you're on YouTube, really you can see the handle right there. I'm assuming everybody knows at this point.
Probably, but you never know. Just in case you actively avoid the Star for some reason, in case like for somebody wrote something that made you mad, like
the IU Star, Dustin. It's the IU Star.
It's a fake,
exactly.
I wrote about Purdue once too. I respect them. So just in case you're a Purdue Pacers fan who avoids the Star because you hate how they overcover IU, I promise I'm giving the Pacers lots of coverage, and I have respect for your Boilermakers. I don't write about them, but I have respect for them. So
2 impressive wins from the Purdue Boilermakers since their loss at Ohio State, at Penn State.
Big time. The Ohio State win was really impressive to rally back the way that they did. I mean, I thought Ohio State was going to, especially early in that game, I thought Ohio State had control, and I thought they were going to have a tough time with that one. And so, yeah, winning that one, I didn't see Penn State last night. I just thought it was cool they played in the Palestra. Just frankly, just so you could get away from the Bryce Jordan Center in the first week of January, because nobody's ever there. I'm a Penn State grad, I can say that. But that was cool, and it's also a cool win for Painter, beating his former pupil, Micah Shrewsbury, as well. Micah was unhappy. Micah's got a tough deal out there, man. Tough. He's going to be good. He's winning at a level I didn't expect him to, but he's
a good coach. He's a very good coach.
Really, Micah's very, very
one of Indiana's finest out there
for sure
right now. Tomorrow we'll be talking. Let's see if there's a significant TJ McConnell shoulder update. That will definitely be a topic of conversation here, and previewing the Knicks. We haven't had a chance to talk to someone who covers the Knicks about the Knicks, so that will be tomorrow's show for you. Dustin will, of course, be covering all these things at the Indy Star as well. Thank you guys a ton for listening. We will see you tomorrow.